Donald Trump has made the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz a central demand of his Iran diplomacy. But across the Gulf, the new reality has already set in. Even if the strait was fully reopened, the fact is that the Arab states depend on a passage they do not control. That realization has set off a rush of new mega projects. Pipelines across Saudi Arabia, ports on the Gulf of Oman, trucking routes through the peninsula, railways to the Red Sea, and corridors reaching as far as Turkey, Iraq, and India. But the same region is also shaped by rivalry, distrust, and unfinished integration. So the projects currently being discussed face more than just engineering problems. They face ambiguous commercial logic, lengthy construction timelines, and, not to mention, deep-rooted political mistrust. But perhaps the most fundamental issue is a misunderstanding of the region itself. You see, the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a choke point, it is the foundation around which the Gulf states built their entire existence. And so, while the GCC members can reduce risk, create backups, and develop emergency routes, the fact remains that in this part of the globe, infrastructure plans travel much further on paper than they do on the ground. The same race to adapt is now also happening in AI. Governments and militaries are investing billions because they believe it will shape the future of warfare. But the same AI being trained to win wars is now available to everyone. And if you're looking for the fastest way to learn, today's sponsor, Outskill, has you covered. They're hosting the Claude AI Mastery Workshop, a full deep dive into Claude, its real-world use cases, and more than 10 other AI tools. It's happening this weekend from 10 AM to 7 PM EST, and they've made it completely free for the CaspianReport audience. Just register through the link in the description. Over 10 million people worldwide have already attended this and rated it a solid 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot. If you're serious about Claude, don't skip this. In 2 days, you'll do deep research with Claude, build your own artifacts and dashboards, create full presentations, set up connectors to automate the boring stuff, get hands-on with Claude Code, build custom agents, generate visuals and videos with AI, and walk away able to put your whole week on autopilot. If you sign up now, you'll also get 3 free bonuses. 50 secret Claude codes that turn it into a god-tier tool, a full AI prompt library, and a personalized AI toolkit builder. And the best part is, you're mentored by leaders from Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Nvidia. What you learn in 2 days will change your next 2 years. Sign up now before they sell out. The link is in the description. Just scan the QR and join the WhatsApp community before seats close. The importance of the Strait of Hormuz hardly needs explaining. Crude oil, natural gas, food imports, consumer goods, industrial equipment, and military supplies all pass through or depend on the shipping system built around it. Before the Iran war, roughly 100 to 150 ships crossed the strait on any ordinary day. After the ceasefire on April 7th, the strait remained largely closed by mutual American and Iranian blockades, and only a handful of vessels were able to move. This then is why the regional nations are now racing to create alternative paths to Hormuz, even if they have to build them from scratch. But the bypass strategy has 2 layers. One is energy, pipelines that move crude away from the Persian Gulf. The other is logistics. Think of ports, roads, railways, trucks, and air routes that keep goods moving. So, while pipelines can relieve pressure on hydrocarbon exports, transport corridors keep economies functioning. Saudi Arabia has the most obvious workaround. Its main oil fields are in the east, hugging the shoreline, but its western coast opens onto the Red Sea. The east-west petrol line, which runs from the kingdom's oil-producing regions toward Yanbu, gives Riyadh what most Gulf states lack: a way to move crude out of the Persian Gulf. During the Hormuz closure, Saudi Arabia increased crude exports through this route. Riyadh is now looking to expand on that advantage. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund is now considering to remake the country's transport network and supply chains into a more coherent system. The Iran war has given these plans renewed urgency. Beyond the petrol line, the Saudis are expected to commission new east-west pipelines, accelerate the $7 billion Jeddah-Dammam railway, and expand highways and large-scale trucking capacity to support the rail network. Riyadh certainly has the money to think in these terms. Higher oil prices have given the country more fiscal room, though the boost faces export limitations. Still, among the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia is best placed to turn geography into strategic depth. It can move west while its neighbors cannot. The UAE has a different kind of advantage. It is the only Gulf country with serious port access both inside the Persian Gulf and outside the Strait of Hormuz. Dubai's Jebel Ali and Abu Dhabi's Khalifa port sit inside the Gulf and are exposed when Hormuz closes. But Fujairah and Khor Fakkan face the Gulf of Oman, giving the UAE an escape route. And this is precisely why the Emirati leadership is now rushing its second west-east pipeline planned for launch in 2027. Once completed, it is expected to double the UAE's oil export capacity through Fujairah. At the same time, the country is working to preserve its commercial lifelines. With Jebel Ali and Khalifa port isolated, the UAE has leaned more heavily on Khor Fakkan to import food, medicine, and consumer goods, while Fujairah is mostly used for industrial trade. But the same geography that offers alternatives also imposes limits. While Fujairah and Khor Fakkan are outside Hormuz, they sit beyond the Hajar Mountains. Moving goods from the eastern coast into the UAE's main population and industrial centers is not as smooth as unloading at Jebel Ali. And even with expanded rail and trucking, the two eastern ports cannot fully replace the capacity of the western ports once normal shipping resumes. Then there is Oman. Oman is not trapped behind the Strait of Hormuz, and that gives it a subtle but valuable role. Its ports at Sohar, Duqm, Salalah, and Muscat serve as outlets for goods that would otherwise pass through the Persian Gulf. Sohar currently functions as a redundancy point, while Duqm has long been framed as a future logistics and energy hub on the Arabian Sea. Meanwhile, Salalah gives Oman a foothold on one of the world's busiest east-west shipping routes. Since the start of the Iran war, Oman's position has strengthened considerably. Much like Saudi Arabia, Oman has benefited from higher oil prices, with its budget based on an average oil price of $60 per barrel. That gives it more flexibility to invest in supporting infrastructure. But Oman's budget is still modest compared to its larger neighbors, and that financial ceiling limits the scale of what Muscat can build. Even if every project secured the funding needed, the arithmetic still wouldn't work, and that mismatch applies to all the Gulf economies. At full capacity, Saudi and Emirati pipelines cannot replace the volume of oil that normally moves through Hormuz. And the same is true for logistics. Ports, roads, railways, trucks, and flights can keep goods moving, but they cannot match the scale of maritime trade. The Gulf states understand this better than anyone, and so the true purpose of these projects is more modest than the official language suggests. Not to bypass Hormuz, but to survive it. Geography sets the terms in the Arabian Peninsula. Here, most cities and supply chains are built around ports near coastal urban centers. There was never any reason to develop a large American-style highway network across the interior because ships were cheaper. Railways faced the same issue. As a result, many land-based infrastructure projects were delayed, cancelled, or treated as vanity programs. The UAE, for instance, delayed parts of its railway development after the 2015 oil bust. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, for all its ambition, has also shown how mega projects can slip when costs rise or priorities change. Take Neom City as an example, which is now pushed back toward 2030. With that in mind, land-based infrastructure in the Gulf faces numerous shortcomings. First, the commercial logic itself is shaky. Investors assume, at least for now, that Hormuz will eventually reopen, and that makes it difficult to justify building permanent alternatives at full scale for a crisis that may not be permanent. The second setback is security. A corridor outside Hormuz is not automatically safe. During the recent conflict, Iran attacked Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline and struck Omani ports. So each and every bypassing pipeline, railway, or terminal can still be taken out. The third problem, and perhaps the most intricate of all, is political trust, or lack thereof. The Gulf states often speak of integration, but their record tells a different story. They have no common currency, no unified defense policy, and not even a customs union that works as advertised. The GCC Customs Union has existed since 2015, but its members still carve out exceptions. Saudi Arabia, for example, has classified goods from the UAE free zones as non-GCC products, thereby using trade regulations as a form of political leverage. But the political mistrust goes even deeper. In 2009, Saudi Arabia refused to recognize Emirati identity cards at border crossings. The aim was to disrupt travel and trade and use the resulting pressure against Abu Dhabi. A few years later, it was Qatar's turn. From 2017 to 2021, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain cut off Doha's air, sea, and land connections. That final crisis was a turning point. It showed that connectivity could be weaponized. This then is why the smaller Gulf states are the most exposed. Qatar is wealthy but trapped. Its LNG exports depart from Ras Laffan and must pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Any serious alternative would require deeper integration with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, or some wider regional corridor. But after the 2017 blockade, Doha has every reason to fear that a pipeline or railway through Saudi territory could one day become a lever of pressure. So for Qatar, a bypass through a neighbor may look like another trap. Kuwait is also boxed in. Its options run south through Saudi Arabia or north through Iraq. On paper, the country could build pipelines, railways, and highways through Saudi Arabia to reach Red Sea ports, and talks are ongoing between the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE to achieve just that. However, Kuwait has some reservations. In addition to its growing debt burden, Kuwaiti lawmakers worry that Saudi financing would give Riyadh too much influence over the country's economy. The Iraqi option is no easier. Kuwait and Iraq have improved relations, and the two have long discussed a gas pipeline from Rumaila to Kuwait to help address Kuwaiti gas shortages. But that project has struggled because of high costs, insecurity in southern Iraq, and pricing disputes. Which is why larger transportation corridors through Iraq would face the same problems, just on a greater scale. Given the rivalries within the GCC, the projects most likely to make near-term progress are those that stay within national borders, meaning Saudi Arabia builds for Saudi Arabia, the UAE builds for the UAE, and Oman builds for Oman. Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, however, are stuck. They could look for alternatives through their neighbors, but every exit route would come at a political price. Since the short-term options for bypassing the Strait of Hormuz are limited, local policymakers oftentimes advocate for more grand strategic projects. One idea is the Iraqi energy and logistics corridor, which would connect the Persian Gulf to Turkey and, from there, to Europe. It has obvious appeal. It would offer more capacity than trucking alone, and it could tie Gulf energy and trade to overland routes beyond Hormuz. But the corridor depends on Iraq, a place teeming with weak institutions, militia influence, infrastructure gaps, budget constraints, and competing foreign powers. Still, Baghdad may yet prove skeptics wrong and build a functional corridor someday in the future. But that corridor cannot be summoned into existence by crisis. There is also growing speculation about reviving the Arab gas pipeline. This one runs into the same problems. The pipeline would pass through Jordan and Syria and could help address Lebanon's energy shortages before eventually linking into Turkey. But Syria remains politically fragile, with major security gaps still unresolved. So, at this moment in time, the Arab gas pipeline is less a shortcut than a geo-economic wager. Another regional project that looks to bypass the Strait of Hormuz is the Hejaz Railway. This one is highly symbolic. Once running from Istanbul to Mecca, it carries the romance of an older regional order. Reviving it could fit the broader Saudi-Turkish re-engagement and serve as a prestige project. But as a serious freight route, it faces brutal technical realities. The old Hejaz line used a narrow-gauge railway of 1,050 millimeters, while Saudi Arabia's modern railways use the 1,435 standard gauge. That means the Syrian and Jordanian sections would require a complete overhaul. Moreover, the Hejaz railway would need a commercial purpose beyond the Hormuz crisis. Otherwise, it risks becoming little more than a monument on rails. There are still a few more ways around Hormuz, but none without a catch. The Mediterranean corridor through Israel remains blocked by the lack of Saudi-Israeli normalization. Meanwhile, the India-UAE-Oman undersea pipeline may be technically feasible, but faces financial uncertainty, especially if investors price in the reopening of Hormuz. The expanding infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Oman could all help, but none can be scaled without money, security, and time. This then is why many projects that look to bypass the Strait of Hormuz often remain in the planning stage. Sometimes the shortest route on a map is still the longest way around geography. I've been your host Shervan from Caspian Report. If you enjoy these videos, consider supporting the channel on Patreon and click the bell icon so the next one doesn't slip past you. Thank you for your time and Saul.